Those who rule their times are mighty champions or atop being far above all others. They carry with them a crushing strength that outshines everything else. There once was a king who succeeded in building a realm. He was also the head of a grand group. Throughout history, some are recalled for their deeds beating a monster lord, healing sicknesses, or simply being strong. But the boy ponders this and gets furious, believing all these tales are a big hoax. He grips his fists, filled with anger, and that boy was coached the way they desired, starting at age 10. But the kid ended up becoming a target in the process, molded however they wished to grow tougher. Surviving was truly a huge cost. Even that lovely girl made him feel real hopelessness, despite her grin, and amid all that soreness, he still had to hear things like, "This is all for your benefit so you'll grow sturdier. At least the moment you part from all of it is nearly here." To all the wounds etched into his spirit, to escape that cursed place behind, the empty heroes. This boy who has endured so much until now is named Davy. He's the one who holds this exciting quest. The girls regret that he's still just a poor, little outcast. They should have made him suffer more. But he doesn't conceal his ease. Despite their young look, they're all ancients who've lived for thousands of years. For calling them old witches, one of them burst into a fury and smashed a rock with a single hit. She tries to knock the boy out, claiming he must crave death, but the main character simply brushes off her outburst. They were trying to restrain her, but she was set on teaching him a lesson, offering a free face fix without numbing, and she kept trying to break free from those holding her, but realized her attempts would be useless. Meanwhile, the boy kept ignoring her entirely. Despite the playful remark, it was still a goodbye, and for all it's worth, the youthful-looking ancient would miss him. She asked that while the boy lived, he wouldn't forget them. For a second, he gazed at all those people closely, almost as if in awe, but he soon turned his steps away, uninterested in recalling those times. Leaving behind many of those who added to his tough training, the boy treads his path, but there's a slight smile on his face, and from the depths of his heart, he hopes he never sees those rogues again. As he moves forward, everything fades until only light remains, a bright, fierce glow. Now he's resting down. It seems medicine is being given through a vein into his body. There is no one else in the space. The drapes sway softly in the gentle wind. That hand can barely stir. His body is so frail he can hardly lift his eyelids. It took so much effort that he quit trying. At last, it returned to that spot. There's a picture hanging on the wall of the room. He is the weak and abandoned prince, and his full name is Davy Alm. The Round Kingdom lies in the eastern part of the land, a minor nation that produced an equally minor heir. Unlike his past life, he thought there would be some benefits in being born noble, like a pool of riches, but clearly, he was just a fool for thinking that. He believed his life would be calm, not realizing how risky the heir's role was. Those who plotted against his family, poisoned cup, and he grew up always under threat. Because he was feeble, he was also at risk of being cast out from the family. In his memories, he began to recall being observed by someone and chose to forget that part. His focus now is to heal. He can handle everything else later. Let fate wait, because once he's healed, he'll be able to conquer anything. He'll be able to defeat every one of those who schemed against him, especially that blonde kid, because the main character was trained by champions for thousands of years. The poor boy is weeping alone, but it seems someone found him. Someone who saw that beginner hiding. This startled the main character. Damn, the guy can't even cry in peace without some jerk showing up to bother him. Stay tough, my main character. It's one of the champions who coached him, who already knows the boy got a legendary thrashing. It was even nice to watch. If he came here just to mock him, let him, said the main character, because he has no patience left for giving replies. They were the ones who greeted him warmly, only to neglect him later once they realized he was weak and useless. The truth is, he felt very uneasy with it, but since he was feeble, he had to bear everything quietly. And now he's there, clearly upset. He didn't go to that place by his own choice and doesn't even really know what he's supposed to do. The champion tried to soothe the boy, saying those people are self-centered and that none of it is his fault because he doesn't know what it means to be a champion. And the true champion there said that the answer to that question is what everyone is seeking, so it's time for the beginner to cheer up a bit, he said, while grabbing him by the shoulders because he decided he would help him find his own answer. After all, they have become kin, but the main character disagrees with that claim. He doesn't even know these people yet. The champion in front of him is named Hercules, and he's a survival master. From that point on, he would devote himself to training the boy's frail body. The news didn't make the main character very happy, since he suspects the process might be painful and downright terrible. Hercules said they needed to get along, but the main character, desperate, said he hadn't even given his agreement yet. That was just a dream filled with his old memories, and now he had woken up once again. he's still bedridden, receiving that vain medicine. Apparently, it really did happen. Somehow he had returned to his own world. Still lying down, he hears the door to his room open. As the person nears, the main character tries to figure out how long he's been back, and during all that time, only one person has come to visit and care for him. The same maid every single time. Of course things would be like that. After all, he had stayed in that state for a long time. But the idea that only one person has tended to him bothers him. It really shows that no one else cares. Still, he should be a bit more thankful. At least someone is looking after his body, which remains in this condition. Opening one eye, he tries to see what's happening in his space. He tries to sit up in bed. It's still very hard to move his body, and there are many things he needs to check right away. The first thing he does is reach for a calendar. After all, he needs to know what day it is and how much time has passed. It's the 278th day of the year Baldus. Come on, is it so hard for the writer to also reuse basic ideas like calendars? We already get that it's a fantasy world. Anyway, it's been 6 full years since he was struck by that arrow. The boy still holds the calendar in his hand and begins to think, recalling the day he was hit in the back by those arrows. It means it's already been 6 years since he was attacked, and it's about time someone paid for it. He can't go back to being the same pitiful person, so he needs to stay focused on fully healing. Looking at his own hand, he decides it's time to start. He gripped his fist tightly with all the strength he could gather, giving his body a command to restore itself. After that, he opened his hand, waiting for a result, until he realized that nothing had happened. Absolutely nothing. He doesn't understand why nothing is occurring. At the very least, something should have. The main character is staring at his hands when a glow appears before him. The heroine said he has a lot of holy power flowing through his hands. That's not exactly a bad thing, but he needs to learn something about it. He could end up becoming the most skilled at controlling that type of power. Holy power really is something impressive. It comes from a god that rules purity and health. Only those favored by this god can receive such power. Daffy was the one who taught the main character how to use it. She had to learn it all on her own, and thanks to her effort, the main character was able to learn something. The biggest issue is that his original body stayed inactive for 6 years. Despite the challenges, all the experience he has is stored in his soul, but his body is still very weakened, so he'll need some more time before he can use his full ability. Even the most basic healing skill isn't working because his body is as worn out as an old cart. He tries to use healing magic over and over again. In other situations, he would have already given up at this point, but his resolve had been sharpened. He even warned his own body it better become useful soon, or things would get tricky. After that inner talk, he finally managed to cast his first spell. He couldn't afford to waste such a great chance. Successfully healing himself with the healing magic at last, he had the strength to stand on his own 2 feet. It's truly amazing that he actually managed to do it, because now he was able to use sacred power with his own body. The rest of his skills will return as soon as he fully recovers his body. The first thing the boy did was walk over to the window, feeling the soft breeze brushing against his face. On top of that, the view he had of the kingdom was truly stunning. It had been a long time since he last saw the sun. That ended up giving the main character a wonderful idea. Now, with a cheeky smile on his face, he stretched out both arms, hands wide open. With all the power he currently had, he was going to praise the sun. Before he could finish whatever he was doing, he heard a strange sound, pottery breaking. It was the maid who had dropped the plate, and right after, she started yelling. The boy froze, caught off guard as well. That woman was in doubt. Was it really the prince? Was he truly all right? The boy wished she hadn't seen him under those circumstances. He felt so ashamed he wished he could go back into a coma. The news that he had woken up spread quickly. The doctor came to see him. After checking him, the doctor said it was a bit odd, since the prince's condition had completely vanished. The boy tried to smile quietly, hiding the source of his sudden recovery. Faced with that quick recovery, the doctor asked him a few more questions, but all the boy felt in that moment was tiredness. That made the doctor quite thoughtful. In another time, our main character would have been more polite when speaking to an elder. In fact, he even misses those manners, but now he must act like someone of royalty, even if it's royalty from the most minor kingdom on the land, and at the moment, he is the main heir to the throne. A woman full of jealousy entered the room, saying his recovery was indeed very strong. She started nearing our main character to examine him as well. He knew exactly who that showy yet utterly vile woman was. Lyons is the current queen, the one responsible for poisoning the main character's mother. From now on, let's call her the bitter one. Even her children were there. The second prince, whom we'll call the envious one, and the third prince, Bullhead. The envious one looked at our main character with a sense of superiority. They had all come to see if the rumors were true, and the main character explained that his body was still very frail. The bitter one even had the nerve to ask if he saw who had fired those arrows, but he wasn't sure who it might have been. They came from far away. He then asked if anyone had been caught, because that was clearly an attempt on the hare's life, and staring deeply at the envious one, he wanted to know what kind of penalty such a person would receive. While the envious one practically panicked, the bitter one replied that no one had been arrested. Moreover, the investigation had been completely closed. Since they had nothing else to do there, they left. The doctor had already done everything he could but believed that our main character would be fully healed in a matter of days, and now he would leave him in the room so he could complete his recovery. Apparently, the bitter one's family had left the room. She said it would have been better if the main character had stayed bedridden or died. He asked if she was annoyed now that the speck in her eye had come back to life. Scared out of his mind, the envious one said the main character was a weak hare for having stayed in a coma. He should teach them how to take arrows in the back, right? Finally, the jealous family left the room. Even from outside, our main character could hear them speaking cruel things about him, so he started focusing on one of his hands. During all this time, he had been using holy magic, but no one noticed, probably due to the huge power gap. The main character's first goal was to ruin the bitter one's family, but after seeing them in person, he changed his mind. It would be like an elephant squashing a few ants. Maybe his temper was refined during those years of training, but he feels this revenge is too small. Still, he decided what he's going to do. He just won't make it his top priority now, because his biggest aim is to fully heal, and after so long without eating, he wonders what his next meal will be. It was time to update his look, so as a first step, he cut off his 80s rocker hair. Bad choice. Several weeks had passed since he started using his holy power, and to speed up his healing, he was also doing physical workouts. Even so, his routine had been very dull. There was nothing fun to do. However, since he's been focusing on the flow of his energy, his recovery has been really quick. In addition, he's been adding to his knowledge, studying dark magic and traditional healing practices, since both involve deep understanding of the human body. Now the main character can do some really neat things just by snapping his fingers, like making water swirl around his body. Truly, using magic makes life so much simpler. While he was distracted, someone said there was a message for him. It was Amy, who had just arrived, but that news didn't exactly thrill him. His meal had also been brought, and it didn't look tasty at all. It was just a plain soup that crushed hopes of eating something delicious, hit harder than the arrows in his back. Since he's still considered a patient, he's being treated like an old man. Since Amy couldn't do anything about it, she said sorry to the prince. Those nutrients wouldn't be enough, so he told her to bring 5 more servings, but after finishing his plate, he realized he needed 10 portions, leaving the maid very shocked. Seeing her hesitation, he reassured her, saying it was fine, he could eat everything without wasting any. Thanks to healing magic, his digestion is very fast. Apparently, the main character has become a machina, a waste machine. However, he really does feel like his body is getting better and better, but food in, food out, and someone who eats like that will eventually need to visit the bathroom. At least he's not blocked up. That would definitely be worse. Sitting in a chair, he's wearing glasses and reading a few things. He ended up facing an unexpected issue. The maid said sorry to the prince, but he knows she's not to blame for any of it. A bill had been sent to him. The prince would have to pay for what he was eating. So he asked the maid how many workers were there. A bit shy, she said she was the only one working in that place, which left the main character stunned. That was a bit of a problem, but it didn't really upset the prince. Many princes had lived in that house before, but now there was only a single maid in charge. Realizing he'd need to manage the place, he asked how much money had been given to them. The maid said they had received 6,000 gold coins, but currently there were only 10 left. Finding that very suspicious, he asked what their monthly budget was supposed to be, and the maid said they were supposed to get 500 coins, but what they actually got was less than 100. The first thing our main character thought was that someone was stealing funds. Then he became worried about the maid's pay and asked how things were for her. He didn't want to ask twice. He thought it important to know if she was being paid fairly. The girl was a little reluctant to say, but she had only been getting 1/3 of her full pay just for working for the prince. That was proof enough that she's a good person, but she's still quite innocent. Maids like her often become property of nobles. Amy herself is the daughter of a baron. She became a maid due to some life troubles, and now takes care of small tasks. And over the past 6 years, she's been devoted to caring for the prince despite all the hardships. It felt good knowing there was someone loyal on his side. He told her to take the part of her pay she hadn't been getting. The maid found that very odd, but our main character was firm. He also asked her not to call him prince anymore. It was too formal. The maid wasn't used to that and tried to resist a little. Using the full extent of his charm, the main character said that formality makes them feel distant from one another. The guy's a charmer, my friend, but it makes sense that he'd be kind to the only person who supported him through all this. He went to the royal finance office. He didn't expect to have to do it himself, but he needed to fix his problems. Even though he went there, he still hadn't seen his own father. The maid wasn't sure if she should have told him about the missing funds, because if the queen found out, it would cause a big issue. The main character is fully aware of the wrongdoing and the risk his maid is taking, but he doesn't plan to back down. He told her not to get distracted and to stay with him. She might fall behind. The truth is, the main character feels nothing but scorn for his father, who did nothing after the death of his wife, and he seems quite fond of the maid who cared for him over the past 6 years. Dealing with the finance officer, the main character ran into red tape. The man said he couldn't do anything about funds that had already been spread out. Just seeing the mustache on that lazy clerk was enough to make our main character very annoyed. Then he began looking at the records inside the finance office. He had already been suspecting it, but it was as if those people were underestimating him, even that horrid mustache clerk. But the main character was already fed up with all of it and slumped into one of the armchairs without care. He sighed deeply at the situation and, with a very serious, sharp look, he asked if the clerk was messing with him. Not just that clerk, but everyone in the room was shocked by his reaction. Then he got straight to the point and asked the clerk why he hadn't been getting all of his coins. The clerk said they were cutting upkeep costs at the castle. Apparently, all nobles do the same. Sighing again, the main character said the clerk was really testing the limits of his patience because the place he's living in has no upkeep whatsoever. Everything looks neglected and deserted. So he was waiting for an explanation from the clerk about this situation, especially where the money was actually being spent. In front of a noble, even one who was clearly angry, the clerk couldn't do anything but obey. It's not common for princes to be aware of their own finances, and because of that, the accounting clerk hadn't been ready. His answer was completely useless. He said the finance department doesn't manage upkeep payments. Even if the prince kept asking questions, that office just handles the budget. They're not there to give out money. The main character had already expected to hear something like that. He said that, no matter the department, they would always find someone else to shift the blame to. Since he finished his business there, he was going to leave. The finance clerk asked if he was heading to the upkeep department, but the prince had no reason to go there, because he knew they would give the same excuse, just pass the blame to another department to buy more time. And he suggested the clerk use the stolen money to buy something for himself. Back in the hallways, our main character sarcastically remarked how well kept the place was. It's really tough to deal with nobility, especially considering how well those clerks are paid. Even while getting only part of her pay, Amy keeps working for him. Looking at his maid with a friendly gaze, he asked if she could fetch a sword for him, leaving the girl very startled. But he made a point to explain he wasn't going to slice anyone with the weapon and started laughing at her reaction. She had gotten really scared. Even so, the maid said she'd get one. The main character didn't lie to her. He doesn't plan to cut a person. What he's going to cut doesn't even deserve to be called human. The main character has just switched to attack mode. Since he's in a weak position, if he starts slashing people for no reason, it would be a huge issue. He'd be banished in no time, as the nobles would say he'd gone mad. There's no way they would allow such actions. But our main character has no intention of staying in a position of weakness before this corrupt nobility. After some effort, he managed to hunt a boar. Amy couldn't grasp how he pulled that off, and our main character said he just happened to find the animal in front of the castle. That was a lie. He hunted that animal, but he's going to play weak and ask the maid to fetch a plate and a sealing agent if they had any. But the maid was more worried about something else which caught the prince's interest. She said she couldn't allow the blood of an animal to touch royal hands. Furthermore, she couldn't let him butcher the carcass. It might result in him cutting himself. With a knife in hand, our main character said it was fine, no one was watching, just to make her even more concerned. He won't be able to speak to the king right now due to political timing, and there's not much he can do with the other departments either. The queen is doing everything she can to make his life harder, but our main character is a survival expert. After all, he was coached by Hercules himself, and now that boar would be his supper. The danger it posed was nothing to him. In the room of the bitter queen, she keeps fueling the resentment of her soul. She wants to know what the prince is up to. She noticed that ever since the main character woke up, he's been acting very differently. According to the doctors, the prince can barely walk. It might take a whole year for him to heal. The servant said there's no reason to doubt that info. Looking firmly at the servant, the bitter queen disagreed. That servant belongs to an assassin guild, the Black Moon, and even though she's using her services, the bitter queen still feels uneasy around her. She also added that her colleagues are average. As for the prince, the very son deserted by the king, she doesn't believe anything will change even after all these years. She thinks the heir's life is in her grasp. At least, that's how things should be. But the bitter queen's doubt is growing. That assassin has something to say to the queen. She advised that the queen not insult her comrades, regardless of their rank. Hearing this, the queen backed off, saying she was just sharing her worries. She believes she can stop the prince's plans at any time, but if things don't go the way she's plotting, someone will end up paying the price. Spilling the rest of the tea from her cup onto the floor, she sent the servant away. The queen is becoming more and more set on eliminating the prince, and the servant is simply waiting for her order. Meanwhile, at the heir's home, he and his servant are having a very pleasant supper. The path of energy is like threading a needle through many strands. It creates a flow very carefully. At least, that's how he was taught. The most difficult paths are the veins and the brain itself, and if you don't want to go blind by mistake, you should heed that lesson. His teacher was a priestess who liked to get tipsy. She could split the sea with a single word, and she had a great time with that training. There was also a mage so small that all he could see was the staff she carried. Guiding all that training was a goddess responsible for the main character's health. Those people weren't just there to watch, help would come in some form. These images came into his mind, just memories from when he began training, and when he started that test, he never wanted to repeat again. Outside, he was in the garden. The maid asked what he was searching for out there. That day, the weather was nice and pleasant, so much so that even the woods looked more refined. Our main character told the maid she could leave, and if anyone came looking for him, she should be told, but he asked her not to overwork herself with her duties. The good thing is that she's slowly getting used to the prince's routine. She still refuses to eat a meal with him, but she's much more relaxed than before, helping him to enjoy calm days while he finishes his healing. Sitting in the middle of the garden, our main character is preparing to start the process. Focusing his magic, an energy field appeared around his body. Within this field, small yellow energy balls began to form until they started circling the main character's body, and he stayed deeply focused in that process. He's drawing energy from nature itself. This method is called energy breathing. He learned it from the god of mages, Odin, himself. There's a limit to how much energy a body can hold, which is why this training must be done daily. The amazing part of this method is that it allows progress that would take months to be gained in just days. If the kingdom learned this method, it would cause a stir, but our main character has no plan to share that knowledge, especially because this isn't something easily done. He stays seated on the grass, feeling the breeze flow across his body, fully aware that there's an intruder nearby watching him. His curiosity about the intruder's identity grows, but one thing he's sure of, it must be the queen's doing. And to avoid trouble, he pretends he hasn't noticed anything, because it's still helpful for him to be seen as a foolish and weak prince. Thanks to his energy distortion field, he's able to train peacefully, and now he can store even more energy. But there's one issue: he's getting closer and closer to the moment when he'll have to do that damn energy circle. Priests can't use magic, and mages can't use holy power, and dark magic is a skill neither of them can wield. But, as you've probably noticed by now, the main character can use all three powers, thanks to the efforts of those two wild teachers and those rogue researchers. Just thinking about the process makes the main character feel sick. Ordinary mages draw an energy circle in their hearts so they can control their own energy. Sadly, that method stops them from using holy power and dark magic, and if he tried to force it, the main character could end up wrecking his own heart. That's why he has a circle made just for him. Its name is the artery circle. By focusing on the arteries of his body, he's able to create a circle that helps manage the energy flow. Basky uses his whole body for this task, achieving amazing results. The problem is that this is practically a body change, a very delicate process. A single error could mean death. That's exactly why our main character wasn't eager to go through this again. The last time he tried it, he succeeded with only a tiny bit of error, and that was with the help of his teachers. Now, needing to do the process alone, he's unsure whether he's capable. Suddenly, he felt hands touching his own. Right before his eyes appeared faint figures, yet their looks were familiar. They were his teachers. Failing certainly wouldn't be worse than spending thousands of years in that temple. That was exactly the drive he needed. Our main character began the process. He's crafting his own magical circle. The day was ending, and the maid went outside to find the prince. It was already past supper time, and the main character was very late. Although he sometimes delays, he never misses a meal. Now the maid faces a dilemma. He asked not to be bothered, but perhaps he needs aid. She doesn't know if she should go or not. While she stays worried, the main character says he had already asked her not to call him prince. Hearing the young man's voice, she was very shocked. Emerging from the garden, our main character announces he's back. He also said she shouldn't have waited for him, as he previously requested. Still, it's hard for our main character to resist this woman's strength, which means he'll have to work even harder. Without warning, he hugged her, but for heaven's sake, the guy can't even hug properly. He left one arm dangling clumsily. Yeah, even so, the man's face turned completely red, as if she were having a stroke. Only then did the prince say sorry to her, revealing that, in fact, he's reached his absolute limit, collapsing to the ground, completely worn out. Now that explains the awkward hug. After tough training in the garden, the main character needs plenty of rest. Our main character wakes up lying in his bed, realizing he'd been worried for nothing. While thinking about it, he noticed something different. Something was touching his hand. That hand belonged to Amy. She had ended up sleeping beside him. Getting up, he recalled he fainted the previous day, which probably worried her greatly, and the task he was so hesitant to complete was done perfectly. Nami has those 3 powers running through his veins. Besides the unusual circle, there's a special effect: the total absence of limits. Moving a single finger, he can cast entire spells. Noticing that the girl had woken up, he quickly wished her a good morning. After that fateful day, 5 months had passed. Amy became increasingly cheerful, mentioning she found some plants in the garden. The main character isn't that shocked, since he's very pleased with their current meals. On the other hand, the maid is very thankful. Exactly 3 months ago, their lives have become much easier since someone started leaving meat and vegetables at their doorstep. At first, he thought it could be one of the queen's tricks, but soon dismissed that idea. Thus, another person was helping the prince, but the main character couldn't figure out who it was. But he is able to use magic, and he senses a presence every time. Using energy to find out where that person comes from is a simple task. While thinking about this, his senses picked up something else. Some people are nearing his house. Knowing this, the prince started moving. Amy was still saying they'd no longer have issues with food, and the prince told her to arrange things, but the girl didn't understand that order until our main character explained that guests would arrive soon. He's eager to see who these people are. A small group showed up. Surely, they must be spies sent by the queen. They came here to check the prince's health. He watches those men with a calm look, knowing they don't grasp the full truth. He wanted to know what the priest thought about his state. He asked if he'd get better soon, and the priest said his condition was weak. It would be very risky to use holy power on the prince's body. He should be grateful for what he's able to do right now. But the prince knows that priest was talking nonsense. He didn't even use a healing spell, breaking the vow he made to the goddess herself just to follow the queen. It's truly annoying. The main character thinks the priest should stop trying to sound noble. He's not refusing to heal because he can't, but because he won't. He asked a few technical questions to the priest, all while thinking that his body is already close to finishing its healing. Responding to the priest said the boy speaks about things he cannot understand. Holy power is something only priests have, and the prince talks about it as if he knows it well. You should stop being so proud. With a taunting smile, the priest was about to make a mocking remark. He then compared the main character to one of the queen's sons. Amy scolded the priest, saying he was in the presence of the prince and should watch his words. He didn't like being corrected by a servant and tried to hit her as a form of discipline. The prince saw all of it, and he didn't like it one bit. The priest began boasting about having done something honorable, fixing a potential issue for the prince. He also said that woman didn't seem like much and held her face in his hands while thinking awful things about her. He said the woman had a lovely smile, and our main character was holding himself back from slicing off his head right then and there. The priest said that, since he came all the way here, the servant should at least guide him to the exit. He would see the prince again in 15 days. Our main character asked Amy to guide the priest to the exit. She wasn't very happy with that order, and the priest clearly had something cruel in mind. The prince pretended to ignore the man's bad intentions. Finally, they reached the gate. The priest told the maid to remember his words, she should come alone at night, and that the prince's life was in his hands. That priest didn't care in the slightest about what he was doing, because even though the prince was of noble blood, he was still a weak and sickly heir. The main character was feeling a strange sensation in his body, like he was getting colder and colder. He couldn't quite explain what he was feeling. Maybe he was just very angry, but he spent too much time in the Temple of Champions to describe such a feeling in simple terms. He was taught that one is less than an animal if they can't control their emotions, but with a sword in hand, his thoughts were very different. The priests grew worried as he approached. They didn't know he was the prince. Controlling one's anger can serve as a guide to lead toward your goals. If laziness is the key to progress, then anger is the force that gets things done. Those two priests were lying on the ground, likely no longer alive. Their leader kept threatening the maid, making it clear he could kill the prince. He said the prince's life was so minor that his death would bring great joy to the queen, and that there was no one in the kingdom on the prince's side. Not only that, there was no one with the power to punish him, since that priest acted as the hands and feet of the queen. The main character waited for the speech to end, and said it was very good, because he too needed an excuse to give. He then swung his sword at that priest. The man fell to the ground, completely at the mercy of the prince. Our main character asked his servant what the penalty was for insulting the royal family. The priest didn't expect that to happen, thinking the prince was still bedridden. Our main character knew he was also curious about how the prince could even move his body. That's why the priest was at such a low level. They never needed that kind of average power. So he asked his servant once again, stressing that he had already told her not to make him repeat himself. She knew exactly what the penalty was for that kind of crime: instant execution. And that's exactly what happened to the priest, whose head now hung from his neck. Blood dripped to the floor. The priest was in extreme pain. He said the queen would never let it end like this. The main character heard those words and gave a faint smile. He thanked the man for the warning but promised him one thing: those who stand against the prince will fall as well. And with a swing, he finished cutting off the head of that fool. In the queen's hall, she said the prince was mad because he had killed someone very important, a follower from the Holy Land. But the prince said that man tried to take his life, and he simply enforced the laws of the land. The bitter queen was absolutely furious. She tried to hit the main character, who found the situation funny. While he was in a coma, the kingdom's laws weren't nearly as strict, not even enough to look into what had happened to him. The prince said that, even after all that, the king stayed silent, and all he had done was punish someone who had insulted the royal family. It made no sense for the victim to be punished for his own actions. He asked the queen when exactly the royal family became lesser than low-ranking followers. The bitter queen didn't like that challenge, because the prince had just reduced the value of her allies. She claimed there was no proof, and that the prince shouldn't judge things with his empty head. She said he was as foolish as his own mother. Those words only made the main character angry. She kept pushing, saying both he and his mother were lesser beings. Showing a bit of his dark intent, our main character had a bit of advice for her. It's not wise to insult someone's parents, especially not in front of that person. The energy was so heavy that the queen fell backward. Knives were drawn, along with other weapons as well. Her maids were trained and ready to protect the bitter queen. One of them was already behind the prince. That presence felt familiar. Our main character said it would have been more interesting if the queen had actually tried harder. Driving nails into someone's coffin, whether it's the queen's or anyone else's, trying to take the life of a royal is no different from any other major crime. After that comment, the bitter queen fell into deep thought, because she realized the main character knows who was behind the attempt on his life. Looking at her, he smiled faintly. He'd always known. He wasn't the kind of person to keep that card hidden for long. Ever since she slapped a patient across the face, it was clear the queen didn't hold much regard for anyone. He told her to act properly inside his palace, since, as she could see, the building was in bad shape. After all, it was the queen who removed all the servants from that place, and he expected her to provide the needed upkeep right away. Otherwise, rumors might start to spread. He advised the queen to think the matter over very carefully, because he wasn't going to stay quiet if she kept acting the same way. Back in her rooms, the queen was smashing objects in a rage. Her maid stood by, waiting for her to calm down, but the bitter queen hated being looked down upon by a half-blood. It filled her with a fury beyond normal. And so, she began scheming against our main character, since he seemed so eager to speed up his own death. She would gladly help with that. He had no idea who he was dealing with. At the castle, people were talking. The rumors were true. Rumors about the prince who, after waking from his coma, seemed to have had his mind changed. Amy, passing by, ended up hearing those things. After the events with the priest and the queen, everything happened just as planned. Gossip was spreading about the prince, claiming he had completely lost his mind. Since many in the palace support the queen, his reputation was being quickly ruined. With joy in her eyes, Amy asked the prince to come see what had arrived. They had received even more. He said he didn't need all those healing herbs, but Amy was deeply grateful for the gifts. There must be someone who truly understands the prince's good intentions. He asked his maid if his personality seemed that good to her. Overflowing with excitement, she couldn't deny that she really did see him as special. Our main character found it odd how she stayed so hopeful, even after he had killed someone right before her eyes. She truly was an amazing person, hard to find. While they were together, a man approached, politely asking for their attention. This elder was named Beezus. He had brought the wrongdoers to the prince, as the queen had ordered. These were the ones responsible for stealing the prince's funds, among them, a few familiar faces. The prince asked how this kind of crime is usually punished. The old man replied that it depended on the prince, but it generally involved beheading. Right away, those who had previously mocked the main character began pleading for their lives. He said that recently, a rumor had been going around the palace. Supposedly, they were saying the prince had developed a strong bloodlust. At least that's what people were claiming. Maybe he should act according to that rumor. After scaring them a bit, the pleading became even more desperate. They were all completely terrified. Without saying another word, he told the elder to handle it. Those people would be arrested. But it didn't please our main character that it happened under the queen's orders. He decided to go along with it, as the situation had become a bit more interesting. Those people would be beheaded in 9 days. Back in his rooms, he also ordered Amy to be promoted, and for a bonus to be added to her pay. He had another question to ask: whether the meeting with his father was still not allowed. The old man apologized, and our main character wanted to know if that was an order from the king or the queen, but the old man replied that he was just a messenger. He asked the boy to be patient, as the kingdom was in a tricky situation. The prince understood exactly what those words meant. He said he would keep that in mind. The old man thought he could leave, but the prince still had something else to say to him. He was eating everything that had been sent to his home. However, it wasn't necessary for the old man to keep sending healing herbs, and since things had changed, there was no need to send food either. The old man began to smile. He said he didn't know what the prince was talking about, but it seemed like he had been blessed. He said the prince would soon be getting guests and needed to go. Our main character was surprised at how much the old man knew about the palace. He then began to wonder about the old man's nature, because he had played the fool, even though all the proof was right there. Beezus is the head of all those who served the king when he was younger. The main character used to see him often. He hadn't expected the old man to be on his side. Then he recalled something the old man had said, that the prince would have visitors soon, and so it happened. Amy had a message for the prince. She told him that the fourth and second princes were there. The two rushed for the main character like wild beasts, throwing themselves at him. The little one is named Winley. She is the second princess. Because she knocked over our main character, she became very worried, wanting to know if he was also hurt. He didn't know who she was, since he wouldn't use energy to spy on his maid. The other person said the girl should have been more careful. That boy is named Barris, and he had already been wanting to meet the prince. The king, the main character's father, is a man hooked on love. At the moment, he has 3 wives, the queen and 2 concubines, Alice and Anisha. Alice is aligned with the queen's plans, while Anisha chose to stay neutral, keeping distant from the other wives. Barris and Winley are the children of this woman, which makes them the main character's siblings. While the boy apologized for what had happened, the girl noticed something. She was about to act suddenly. She tried to kick her brother in the head, but the boy managed to dodge the attack. He asked why the girl was doing that. She was very annoyed by her brother's behavior, who was acting far too formal and strange. After all, it was he who had been so eager to meet the prince. The two began to argue fiercely, showing that they truly are siblings, prompting our main character to watch the whole debate. He heard they had been handling a group of bandits. Maybe it was true, and looking at them closely, they hardly looked like royalty. After a long argument between them, they turned their focus to our main character. They were still the siblings who always listened to everything he had to say. The girl was annoyed, because the prince had started laughing at their dispute. It had been 6 years since the last time they talked. After the prince fell into a coma, they were sent to a far-off area. They were only 8 years old at the time and couldn't do much during tough times. Besides that, Anisha had sent her first daughter to a foreign kingdom due to the bitter queen's plots. She had to protect her children. Our main character doesn't realize how hard it was to make those choices, and not everyone is able to understand that. He asked if his siblings had spoken to their father. They said they had met with him before coming to the prince. Our main character wanted to know how the king was doing. The brother said he seemed a little worn out, and the girl noticed that he still hadn't seen his father. Our main character knows it might be tough, but he'll be able to meet him soon. On the way to the prince's home, they saw something that needed to be said. The condition of that place was truly sad. He said some people had been stealing the budget, but those people had already been caught. Hearing this, his brother became very upset. He couldn't accept that something like this had been done to his sibling. It was unthinkable that money had been taken from a sick person. They were going to speak to the king, but our main character asked them not to tire themselves with that. His brother looked like he was about to take action, but he suddenly stopped after realizing what he had heard from the prince. The main character seemed quite calm and stated he would handle his own matters. The reunion with his siblings made him happier. He hadn't realized there were so many people on his side, though maybe it was just his imagination. He kept chatting casually with his siblings, and it seems the girl has some talent for magic. And once again, they went back to talking about small matters. His brother also has a skill for sword fighting. Despite their frequent disputes, they are gifted. They started to rejoice lively, and the prince asked them not to wreck his home. It was nice to see them so joyful, and Barassi was correct about one thing: the hero had never ventured beyond the palace, and it wouldn't hurt for him to experience an event in that world, even if just once, because this is a chance to be embraced where he might also enjoy some fun, and he began hoping the trip would start soon. Others are also hearing about this fencing tournament. Barris is nearing 14, and he's almost becoming a grown-up too. They know the twins are likely speaking to the prince now, but the elder told them not to fret, as the prince is turning into an outstanding person. He's calm and blessed with sharp insight, and the elder was quite amazed to see how much he had transformed. To the mysterious man, the elder's opinion was more than sufficient, and the one who appears to be the romance-obsessed king finds this situation a bit gloomy. A picture of the former queen had been set on the table. The hero gazed at his mother's picture with great delight. Until now, he had been overlooking the condition of the palace. Thanks to the elder's aid, the structure was repaired very swiftly. Amy also valued the restoration. She couldn't believe the day had finally arrived, and the hero noticed her curiosity was a bit too unusual. Perhaps he had pushed her too much, but Amy was pleased that things were going smoothly. Then they asked the prince if he was prepared, because the time for the journey was approaching. Our hero asked Amy to look after that bottle for him. Now they were set to leave. They're heading toward the kingdom of Pisti, the city of waters. This tournament is an event that captures the world's focus and holds great sway. Since his brother is going to compete, the prince was allowed to go with him, even though he's supposedly unwell. If Bearers does well in the tournament, the envious prince's reputation will suffer. The queen agreed to let the concubine's son join, as if she were sure he would flop. It's as if she were scheming to undermine him somehow. The king also attended the event, and is being greeted as a high-ranking official. That was the first time the hero had seen the king since he awoke. It's as if for the past 6 months the king had been dodging his own son. The king commanded them to lift their heads. He wanted to know if his son felt assured. The young man said he did and that he would try his hardest to honor his king well, and the king hoped for his safe return. After that, the two talked for a while, but then the king noticed someone staring directly at the first heir, who was also looking back at him steadily without showing any reaction. The king turned away from the boy, but said it was very good to know he was healthy. The hero's sister noticed that the prince had no intention of wasting his emotions now, but he wasn't surprised by his father's current state. They were saying that Barris's involvement in this tournament was of great importance to the whole kingdom. They would rejoice in it. Our heroes saw that the king had changed a lot. There was no sign of his former bravery or confidence. He looked more like an old lion, wary of his own tasks. After that ceremony, they were already inside the carriage. Burris said the trip might be dull, but top-notch guards had been hired to protect them, and asked if the hero was troubled by anything. His only worry was that the journey would be tiresome since everyone was concerned about his health. The girl said that since they received that wine from the hero, the trip would be much easier. Barry scolded her, telling her to be cautious with the drink, but it was her first time tasting something so fine, and she asked where the hero had gotten it. He didn't even know because that bottle had been left by his mother. His siblings were concerned about using something so valuable, but the hero didn't mind because it was meant to be enjoyed, and they should do so on a special day like that one. They realized the prince had changed a lot. He used to be very protective of the things his mother left behind. Our hero didn't expect them to have such fond memories. Either way, they went back to celebrating, and so the carriage continued toward its destination. At night, they stopped to camp and would resume the journey at dawn. The trip would last one more day. Barris was worried about the prince since it was his first time camping. He said he was okay and asked where Windley was. He was told she had gone for a stroll. Apparently, she had drunk quite a bit. Our hero apologized for the wine. Then they recalled that the hero used to say he wanted to camp like that, and they were doing their best to keep the stop short so they wouldn't put too much strain on the prince's body. The whole journey was being handled more carefully, as he was being treated like a sick person. Our hero realized that some things change with time, while others stay just as they've always been, and he was thankful to be with his siblings. Then he said goodnight to the boy who was heading to his cabin. Amy asked if the prince wasn't going to rest as well, but he was captivated looking at the sky. The moon was more stunning than usual. With the stick in hand, he began making a few swings. He said it was the perfect moment to make his comeback and asked what Amy thought of that. Pointing to the sky, he said the red moon is called Cyrus, and the blue one is Cryas. That's what the guard said. The red one starts to glow as the blue one dims. This is common knowledge there, a tale even kids know. He admitted that he should have chats like that beside a woman. Another guard approached him to ask who he was talking to alone, but he didn't know he was speaking with someone else. The prince just watched from afar, because it was he who had spoken to the guard, who now believed he had talked to a spirit. His siblings had hired 5 guards in total, 4 of them top warriors. That should be enough for safety, as long as nothing serious happens, like being attacked by a band of killers. Our hero knew they were being followed by about 20. They would likely strike once everyone fell asleep, and they were very skilled at hiding their tracks. A great chance for the queen to eliminate them all. She would never miss an opportunity like that. The hero wasn't pleased about it, as it risked exposing his true nature, but when he thought more deeply about it, none of that really mattered because the people who would see his power wouldn't live to tell. If you have no teeth, bite with your gums. That's what his sword teacher taught him. Whatever he holds in his hands becomes a weapon. There are no rules in a fight for survival. Weapons are an extension of the body. Depending on how they're used, even clothes can become fine blades. Our hero realized those killers were weaker than expected. They didn't even come close to Hermesa, the one who had trained him. In the end, it was nothing more than a tedious distraction, and he was only going to ask that to confirm it, because he knows it was the bitter queen who sent them to die. Even so, his foes kept their calm. If they don't want to answer questions, the prince won't force them, because that won't change what already happened. But he would like to know what the queen hoped to gain with that attack, since it would shake the kingdom. Even she would have a tough time with that. It's as if there's a secret reason behind her confidence in launching such an assault. Our hero proceeds to take down his attackers. He noticed that some of them hadn't fled yet. Apparently, he didn't grasp the gravity of the situation. He ordered that a message be sent to the queen. He will ruin everything she has, even if she stops bothering him. The killers hesitated for a moment, but knowing they would be executed, they fled the area, leaving the prince completely alone. The boy had a grin on his face and asked if the killers were running just because he gave the order. He said it was nothing more than a weak taunt. Using a hidden skill, he finished off the last one still alive and began mocking their cleverness, which had fallen for that trick. The most important trait for a killer is patience. If there's no one left to see it, it's an assassination, so they should remember that. As he said those words, 2 other killers tried to attack him, but it was pointless to try and strike the hero from behind. The problem is one of them really did try to escape, while the others tried to buy a little time, but the hero finished them off easily. He said his foes weren't worth more than the stick he used as a weapon. He pointed his finger toward a spot deep in the woods. His sight had locked onto an object. He had prepared it as soon as he learned about the ambush. There's no way his target could escape his gaze. All it took was a snap of his fingers, and the killer was caught in a soul blast technique. That skill was a bit harsh, fitting for the context. He shouldn't show mercy to anyone who tries to take his life. That's how they taught him at the Temple of Champions. It was a fitting end for all of them, a perfect assassination. The author of that act would never be found, and that's what made it perfect. The bitter queen was eager to know how the killer's mission had gone, but the servant had no good news to deliver. The candles tied to her pupils' lives had been completely snuffed out. The queen realized that all of the killers had been slaughtered. Then she asked how those royal brats were doing. She learned that all of them had arrived safely at their destination. Faced with the killer's failure, the bitter queen slapped the woman across the face. She said they were useless fools who couldn't handle a few kids and a handful of knights. How could 20 killers have been defeated? They're still looking into everything, and from the looks of it, someone is helping the prince, but the queen doesn't know who could be aiding those brats, and that only makes her even more furious. She ordered the killer to find out who that helper is because she will direct her anger toward him, making it clear to the killer that she isn't working with them to collect failures, and if next time the result isn't what she wants, she will end her contract and use all the power of the crown to wipe out the Black Moon once and for all. The servant said she will remember those words. Inside the carriage, they can already see the kingdom of Pisti on the horizon. The twins soon begin to bicker, while our hero is relieved that they have reached their destination. It's a small kingdom, about the size of Singapore for comparison, but it's full of ancient streets and is one of the most beautiful places on the entire continent. Our hero is admiring the charm of the place. His brother noticed that he seems very pleased to be in that country. A large building stands before them, almost like an arena. That's where the fencing tournament will take place. That place is usually used for battles between fighters and beasts, and now it will host this tournament, which will involve 8 countries in total. In the end, thought our hero, it's just a way for countries to show off their fighting strength to each other. Not everyone there is thrilled about the tournament, since all the participants are under 20 years old. Not all of them are skilled. Nearby, the princess pointed out that the representative of the Kingdom of Round is that fool she's accompanying. Our hero found it funny that they keep bickering, but he knows his brother's skills are only average. He's close to becoming an expert. It's truly impressive for someone so young. The representative from the Kingdom of Fallon is the renowned sword princess. Our hero doesn't know who she is, and his sister said that everyone in the kingdom knows this person. Apparently, someone new appeared during his coma. Eleanor Fallon is the only princess of her king and has 9 brothers. She's also the crown's favorite, but the hero's brothers said her fame isn't only due to being the sole princess. She is famous for wielding the divine sword, a blade blessed by God, a masterpiece that took 1,000 days and 1,000 nights to complete, also called calderas. It's been a while since the hero last heard that name, because the sword god Hares was his first teacher at the Temple of Champions. Although truly lazy, he was highly skilled, and the hero had often heard the name of the blade he used. It was with that very weapon that the Demon King was defeated, so it's only natural that he would leave his mark there in some way. Even so, our hero still feels a little odd. The girl that passed by the hero and decided to look back, they asked her what happened. Trying to hide what she felt, she said it was nothing important. The divine sword has never been damaged, and it is capable of producing magic because it holds a spirit within, cultivated by its creators and by those who wield it. It's not called the divine sword for nothing, and after many centuries, it shows Alina as its wielder. But there is another reason why this princess is also famous, something equally important, and that cannot be ignored. She was one of the most beautiful women on the continent. Our hero was pleased with that information because, to him, that's the only part that really matters. Later that day, our hero asked if there wasn't another outfit because he didn't like the one Amy had picked, but the girl was hopelessly impressed. Even if he didn't like the outfit, he was a representative of the kingdom and needed to be well dressed. That event wasn't just for the tournament, the royal family had other goals. Finally, the hero met up with his siblings. The twins really liked the outfit he was wearing. The boy told the hero not to praise the girl too much, or she might start believing it. Right after that, she almost crushed his foot while the boy tried to recover from the pain. The hero left with his sister. They were heading to a grand dance, and once again, that mysterious girl found herself distracted. She complained a little about the noise, but she was looking in the hero's direction. The event was the perfect chance for the new generation of nobles to meet each other. The mysterious woman said the place wasn't bad, and although the arena was rough, it was very lovely. A grand feast was being served in honor of the tournament. Inside the hall, the nobles were getting to know one another better. Our heroes observed those who were likely competitors. They all looked very young due to the age restriction. Even though the attendants were a bit older, they still looked very youthful, and among them, someone stood out as being noticeably more popular. Barris, at that exact moment, was being approached by several people. It seemed that many girls were quite interested in him. Judging by his abilities, that was to be expected. They should take advantage of the moment and learn more about their potential rivals. Willie also seemed to be getting a lot of attention. Our hero found the event to be very lively. He even thought about helping his brother in some way because the boy clearly wanted some kind of support and was heartbroken to see that he had been completely ignored by the prince. Little did he know, the prince wanted the young man to enjoy life a bit. Apparently, loving too much is a trait the hero inherited from his father. Winley had been waiting for the day she could dance with her brother. He didn't know the girl danced too, but she had to learn, being of royal blood. The girl wanted to know why the prince seemed upset. If it weren't for his current condition, he couldn't have joined in the tournament too, because he was also skilled. Our hero said that she puts him on a pedestal. Skill is nothing more than an illusion. Without hard work, skill becomes meaningless, and that kind of attention is not something he's looking for, because it doesn't matter to him. The hero's dream is to live life without worries. His sister said he sounded like an old man saying things like that, until someone approached them, wanting to meet with Princess Winley. Taken by jealousy, our hero wanted to know who that skinny jerk was, and he was surprised that the man knew his sister. By the look on the girl's face, it wasn't a pleasant encounter. Even so, he approached the princess, pushing the hero aside because he really wanted to talk with her for a bit. She said she couldn't do that, as she was in the middle of a conversation with her brother. The young man didn't deny being upset and apologized for the lack of manners. He introduced himself to our hero. His name is Boltus, the seventh prince of his kingdom. Let's just call this rare gem, Cheerful Fool. The hero was about to introduce himself, but the Cheerful Fool already knew who he was. Even though he knows his identity, our hero doesn't seem impressed. The Cheerful Fool asked what brought the prince there, and our hero said he came to watch his brother in the tournament, but he was surprised that the Cheerful Fool pushed him, even knowing he was a prince. The extra wished the prince an enjoyable stay, and turned his attention back to Princess Winley. He said he wants to win the tournament and dedicate his victory to her, but she found that unnecessary and rude to the other competitors, and the Cheerful Fool said it wouldn't be rude as long as he wins the tournament. She said her twin brother will also join, and making such promises belittles the boy's talent. Pulling the prince by the arm, she left the Cheerful Fool behind. Our hero felt pleased, realizing his sister can take care of herself, but he didn't like the extra's behavior one bit, who definitely wouldn't let things end like that. Approaching the princess, he asked if she was belittling his presence. Our hero realized the guy was being too aggressive, and he had tested the limits of the hero's patience. He stuck out his foot so that he would trip, while holding him in place with just one hand in a discreet manner. Our hero said his hand had slipped and warned the Cheerful Fool not to lay a hand on his precious sister. He should consider himself lucky for leaving without any broken bones, since that would ruin his participation in the tournament, but the Cheerful Fool was even more outraged at being humiliated. He clenched his fists and slapped the hero's face with a glove. At first, he was confused by the gesture, but he was being challenged to a duel by the Cheerful Fool, who clearly hadn't been humiliated enough. His sister tried to step in, and the Cheerful Fool told her to stay out of it, because he had to do this for his honor as a knight, but a woman said he was just making a scene in that place. Everyone knew who that blonde was. She had seen it all happen and had a question for the Cheerful Fool, and to the hero's complete surprise, she asked whether the Cheerful Fool had the right to reclaim the honor he lost. She was Haris, a sword goddess, Haris, hero of a fallen empire, who became one of the great powers of that continent. It is said she was the original wielder of the sword Calderis and creator of a lost swordsmanship technique called Claymore. Those who mastered that technique could create synonyms with a swing of their blades, and our hero quickly thought she might be Haris. But in fact, she is Princess Elena of the Fallen Empire. Her appearance started to cause a bit of a stir. Our hero was also quite shaken. He was amazed that the princess looked so much like Haris, because he was sure Haris was a man. Strange that now she's a woman. It seemed that, instead of just thinking it, he had said it out loud. Standing face to face with him, the princess wanted to know what he was saying. She was so close that he was feeling a bit uneasy. He said he was mistaken. Even so, the princess stared at him with intensity, while our hero claimed to have forgotten what he was saying. He had no idea how things got to that point. Even his brother came over to see what was going on. The princess turned her attention back to the Cheerful Fool, saying he was disrespecting everyone there. The woman, known as the Emperor's Forbidden Treasure, was truly impressive because she was charismatic, and she said that if the Cheerful Fool truly valued his honor as a knight, he should apologize to those two guests, but he was full of rage from being humiliated. Our hero figured that someone so prideful wouldn't apologize so easily, and he saw in that a great opportunity. Before the Cheerful Fool could apologize, he confirmed that he accepted the duel. That statement left his sister very worried. But our hero wasn't going to let the Cheerful Fool escape his wrath. The princess said the fight was pointless, but the hero replied that it was up to him to decide whether to accept it or not, and he asked if the Cheerful Fool really wanted a duel, because if it's a beating he's looking for, then a beating is what he'll get. It had been a while since he last wielded a wooden sword. His brother was very worried since his opponent was someone who would be joining in the fencing tournament, but he told his siblings not to be afraid because of that. The Cheerful Fool said he was just an amateur and that he should quit before causing problems for his own brothers. If he were to kneel before the Cheerful Fool, he would forgive the hero's offenses. That only made his brother even angrier, but the prince said it was fine because actions speak much louder than words, and he asked if the Cheerful Fool agreed with him. The extra said that if he lost, he would kneel and admit defeat. Given that promise, our hero warned him not to regret it later. Finally, the two could begin their fight. Our hero was thinking about the best way to handle the situation because he was still acting like someone who had been in a coma for 6 years, and he didn't want to show his full potential there. Maintaining a completely carefree posture, the cheerful fool asked if he was scared. He had been waiting for the prince to make the first move, and he had just wasted a great opportunity. Soon, an excellent idea formed in our hero's mind.